introducing one of my favorite people. I call her my spiritual mother, spiritual mama. And I think I've told you guys I do the social media, and I put together the slide or the graphic that has Martin Luther King Jr. and her on there, and I said, two of my favorite people ever. Give it up for Rev. Georgia Prescott. Let me just tell you one quick story. She is the founder of Center for Spiritual Awareness. They are a sister church, an amazing, amazing community. But really what I always say about Rev. Georgia is that she's the truth. When I first came here, I was trying to get the work I do out there, and I sent like packages to like 40 churches. One church responded and said, come on in, let's meet. And she just read my book and said, I love what you do. I love how you teach. Let's do this. One church out of 40. That's who she is. And then last week, when we had the storm, Mom said, Rev. Georgia, we don't know what we're going to do. Can you just hang out? She's like, listen, I'll just come for anybody who shows up. That's who she is. Give it up for Rev. Georgia Prescott. My spiritual mama.
It's always a little unnerving to get a standing ovation before you begin, because it could all go downhill from there, you know. But you know, it's always my honor to come here, not only because my spiritual daughter is the first lady here, but also because you do what you do. You know, today is part of the weekend of the honoring of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and that's a great thing. We should have a day. We should have a weekend. But this church doesn't just wait for the weekend. This church does his legacy every day, every Sunday that you come here. Let me read you a quote. Men often hate, this is from Dr. King, men often hate each other because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. They don't know each other because they cannot communicate. They cannot communicate because they are separated. But not here. Not here. We don't wait for one day a year to be able to come together and talk. People of color, white people, talk together, learn about one another, communicate about one another, become less fearful of one another. So it's a great day for me to be able to come and be here on this day. The topic that I am working with today, I always like to anchor my talks in a spiritual principle. And the spiritual principle that I've chosen for today is love points the way, the law makes it possible. Love points the way, the law, spiritual law, God's operating system is what makes it possible. Another way of saying love points the way is desire points the way. Because spiritually, love and desire are actually synonyms for us. We teach here that it's the Spirit's good pleasure to give us the keys to the kingdom. But what if we don't know what the kingdom looks like for us? We know that the kingdom may be in the sky because God is everywhere, but heaven is at hand right here. And we need to know what it is that our kingdom looks like. You know who knew what his kingdom looked like? Dr. King. He didn't give a I have a hope speech. He didn't give a I have a wish speech. No, I have a dream speech. And as our young people said, it was very specific. He knew exactly what his dream was, what his desire was. And while we're not there yet, because of him and because of his desire and his commitment to his desire and his understanding of how God's operating system works, because of all of that, we're much farther today. You know, it used to be that they often said that the most segregated time in America is 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning. And in many places that's still true, but not here. Not here. And not in many, many churches that are coming up around the world. Well, here's the thing. It's not only our desires that we're willing to share. Oh, I desire to play better golf, or I desire to have a mate. It's also our secret desires. Well, Reverend Georgia, you might say that now, but you don't know what my secret desire is. You know, I've been flirting with this guy at the water cooler, and the only problem with that is he's married and so am I. And here's how I think God would answer that. I think God would say, your desire is not that guy at the water cooler. Your desire is to be flirtatious. Your desire is to have a passion in your own relationship that makes you feel cherished, that makes you feel youthful, that makes you feel special. God would say, go home. Try and make that happen there before you take up at the water cooler. But to experience our true desire, we have to learn how to swim downstream better, not upstream. We have to work with God's natural spiritual laws, God's operating system. So, for instance, have you ever tried to hug a 13-year-old in front of his friends? It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And the reason it's not going to happen is because it's not the natural order of things. At 13, he wants his independence. Today, I want to talk about something that I think can help us swim downstream better. I think it can help us get this idea that love points the way, desire points the way, and the law makes it possible. And that's the idea of inverse paranoia. W. Clement Stone, who was a great philanthropist, and businessman and metaphysician, he was a great philosopher. He once described himself as an inverse paranoid. And what he meant by that is he believed that instead of the world plotting against him, that the world was plotting for him. And he lived that way all of the time. Instead of seeing every difficult event as negative, he saw what could be something that would enrich him, empower him, and put his desire closer at hand. You know, we could end so much pain if everybody would live as an inverse paranoid every single day. I have friends who've been divorced for 10 years, and they're still dragging that divorce story around. They're still dragging that resentment around. They're still dragging that betrayal around. And I don't doubt that it was a difficult time 10 years ago. But they're still there. They're still there. Holding on to our victim stories makes us sickly, and it holds us back from realizing our desires. Inverse paranoia is a medicine that can cure victim consciousness. Suddenly, obstacles are not seen as the world hates us, but as opportunities for a new step in our direction. Maybe your car broke down on the road. And instead of thinking, oh, the next person who's going to come by is going to hit me over the head with a hammer, you think, no, the next person who's coming by might be my new best friend, might be my new mate. Maybe you've been downsized in your company. Instead of thinking that it's the end and that there's something wrong with you, you embrace it as an inverse paranoia of somebody, now I'm going to get a job I really like with people I really want to be with for 8 hours every day at a great salary. Maybe you've been dumped. Instead of thinking it's the end of the world, you go out and find somebody who actually wants to go to work every day, get a job, be happy in your life. I have friends who've gone through the battle of cancer, and often what they tell me is that it gave them an opportunity to shift their life, to realize what balance was, to realize what good food was, to realize what exercise was, to realize what rest was. These are type A personalities who never knew any of those things until that happened to them. And they're living lives much more flourishing today. If we approach that good is not an accident, that everything and everyone shows up for a reason, and that reason always brings enhancement, When we realize that, we will know peace. I encourage us to wake up every single morning and announce to the world, I'm an inverse paranoid. I'm not thinking the world's plotting against me today. I'm thinking the world's going to do me something fabulous today. The second awareness I want to work with to help us understand this concept of love points the way and the law makes it possible, and to help us swim downstream, is to understand how frequently we live outside of our comfort zone or inside of our comfort zone. Our comfort zone, think of your comfort zone as a prison, largely self-created, and it consists of a collection of must not, can't not, they don't like me, I'm not good enough, and other unfounded beliefs about yourself. It's a prison that will keep you stuck from moving forward. Some of you may have heard me tell the story about the fleas. There was a government study. Kills me. They had a government study. They had scientists who stood around a table. I don't know how much they made. They had little clipboards. And they would study this jar of fleas. And the little fleas would jump up, and they would hit their little flea heads on the top of the jar, and they would fall back down. Jump up, fall back down. Jump up, hit their little heads, fall back down. And they did this for about a half hour. And then they took the lid off the jar. And what they noticed was this. The little fleas only jumped to the top of the jar. They could have jumped out and been free. They only jumped to the top of the jar. Your comfort zone works the same way as a thermostat in your house. When the temperature of the thermostat is set at a temperature that you've set, you've done this, you've set the temperature. And when the air in the room goes above that temperature or below that temperature, it sends an electrical signal. And the heater or the furnace kicks on and brings it back into the comfort zone that you have set. Well, you have a psychological comfort zone that works exactly the same way. Instead of electrical signals being sent, you use discomfort to signal to keep you within that comfort zone. You begin to feel discomfort, you step back. You change. You become smaller because you want to get back into that comfort zone that you were in. You know, Jack Canfield once said that he had a salesman. He was a cash register sales regional manager. And so he had a salesman that he said was a $3,000 salesman. That was his comfort zone, $3,000 a month. And so if he made $3,000 a month in a week and a half, he'd go play golf the rest of the month. If it got to be week 3 and he only made $1,500, he would work night and day, night and day, night and day to get to that $3,000 before the end of the month, because that was his comfort zone, and he was going to stay within that. You know that 80% of all lottery winners go bankrupt within the first 5 years of winning their money. Why? Because they're out of the comfort zone. Some of us, myself included, you know, I went to a hairdresser once, and I don't know how I found this place, but it was certainly not mine. And they gave me a little wrap to put on and tried to give me a glass of wine. I almost took it because I was so uncomfortable. They put me in a little room and had music going on. All I wanted was a haircut. That was it. All I wanted was a haircut. I didn't think I belonged. But of course I belonged, because I'm a child of God. And there's no place I don't belong. There's no place you don't belong anywhere. To even think about getting out of our comfort zone, though, we have to feel the fear and do it anyway. Bob Proctor, that great metaphysician, once said that we come this way by once. We can either tiptoe through life and hope we get to death without being too badly bruised, or we can embrace life and even the bruises and move ourselves much farther. But we come by fear naturally. It's a gift of God. It came to us because it signaled to us when something was amiss. Now, usually, it used to, years ago, a tiger was chasing you. You wanted fear because that meant you need to move a little quicker to get out. But the only tigers chasing us right now are between our ears. And they're chasing us every single day. Finally, I want to talk about cooperating with God's operating system, which is when we say love points the way, the law makes it possible, we're really saying you got to cooperate with God's operating system, which means to watch our mouth. And I love your morning prayer. I am going to get that. I'm going to have Anita send me that morning prayer, and I am going to read it and sing it every day. It is a fabulous prayer because it reminds us to watch what we're doing. Prayer works. We have to be aware of it. The average researchers tell us, probably the same researchers as the fleas, I don't know, but researchers tell us that we think 50,000 thoughts a day, and most of them are about ourselves. And 80% of them are negative. 50,000 thoughts a day, mostly about ourselves, and 80% of them are negative. I shouldn't. Nobody likes me. I can't dance. I'm going into a place where all straight people live. Maybe they won't like me because I'm gay. Maybe they won't like me because I'm a person of color. Maybe they won't like me because I'm white. Maybe they won't like me because I'm bald. Whatever the reason, we have to begin to get rid of that message that we shouldn't, nobody likes me. When we get the message, we're not getting the message. When we don't get the message that love is what motivates us to do better, we can't move forward. We can learn, you and I, to be kinder to ourselves as we look at our mistakes. And that kindness is what will make transformation possible. It's not the language. It's the energy of love. And Dr. King knew that so well. You probably have all heard the story of when he was doing a march and a white man spat on him. And Dr. King took the handkerchief out of his breast pocket, wiped the spittle, and handed it back to him and said, "Sir, I think this belongs to you." We can be that person. We can do that work. But in order to do that, we have to learn how to be kind to ourselves. We have to transform that inner critic into our inner coach. And to do that, we have to understand what self-criticism is all about. Self-criticism is simply judgment that is motivated by love. And I want to say that again. Self-criticism is only criticism motivated by judgment, motivated by love in our life. When part of us, when we're self-critical, part of us is trying to get another part of us to do something better in our life. We just go about it the wrong way, which was what many of our parents did. Probably when you were a kid and you ran out in the street, your parents either grabbed you and gave you a good pop or sent you to your room or said you were nuts or whatever they did, but it was all negative. But they were only motivated by love. They wanted to keep you safe. But the message didn't come through. And the message doesn't come through when we're constantly negatively talking about ourselves without kindness. Truthful, motivate love. Oh, I got that. All right. All ills in this world could be solved by making sure that we understand this concept that love points the way, our desire points the way, and the law makes it possible. Let's take this message into prayer. Mother, Father, God, we thank you for this time together. We thank you for the spiritual wisdom that unity brings to us so that we can go out and live lives of happiness and joy. I give thanks for that. I give thanks for every person here taking time out to say, I know there's a spiritual answer. I know that the divinity that lives within me is capable of anything. I give thanks for that too. I release this word into the law, and together we say, and so it is. Thank you. Thank you. Y'all make me nervous. I want to just take a moment to do a plug, if I might. And I haven't even asked Anita if this is okay, so I hope it is. Get the hook. There is a belief that I have that in terms of racism, white people caused it and white people can cure it. It doesn't mean that there's not a role for every single person of color in this also, but we need to get white people thinking and working on this issue. And we don't need to wait for another George Floyd or Breonna Taylor to do that. So a colleague of mine and I are doing a 12-step class using the 12 steps of recovery, this time for the recovery of white conditioning. This is a class that is 7 weeks long. I'll have some flyers back here if you want to talk to me or ask me any questions about it later. But you're all invited to come and join us for this. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I think that we'll be able to get to some meat and begin to make some systemic changes within ourselves as well as within our communities. So please just ask me if you're interested. Thank you again.